Hello, everyone, and welcome to Performance Anxiety's 43rd online live reading event. My name is Tom Snarski, and I'm so thrilled and thankful to be hosting this evening's reading. Usually I'd be with one or two or several of my cats, but they're not here because I'm in a hotel in Richmond, Virginia, and even though they're not here, they're here in spirit, celebrating this incredible night of poetry that we're all looking forward to tonight. In case you haven't listened in before, Performance Anxiety is an online reading series of mostly poetry, not always exclusively poetry, but mostly poetry, hosted via Skype, usually on the third Thursday of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central Time. At each of our events, we feature a group of invited readers to share a selection of their work with us. We always have slots for readers like every month, and that means we're always looking for people who might be interested in joining us. So if you are or know a poet or writer who'd be interested in sharing their work at a future event, or if you're, sitting on the call listening and thinking, I could do that, please do get in touch with us. We would love to hear from you. We're on Twitter at Performance Anxiety, which is Performance ANXT, and Twitter notwithstanding. We're also on Instagram and email and stuff. So you can find us, like me, for example, on Twitter. I'm at Tom Snarski, TOMSNARSKY, and I'm there at Instagram as well. You can also just email me. We have a Performance Anxiety email that's poetrybooksontape, all one word, at gmail.com. You can also get in touch with Kristin Garth, who is Performance Anxiety's co-founder and co-organizer, and I'm also excited to introduce Kristin in her capacity as our very first reader of the evening. So without further ado, Kristin Garth is a woman childish, pushcart, Ristling nominated sonneteer and a Best of the Net 2020 finalist, the author of The Meadow, just out from Alien Buddha Press, and 26 more books of poetry and prose, a whole alphabet of really great stuff. She's the dollhouse architect of Pink Plastic House, a tiny journal, and she'll be leading off the reading tonight. Kristin, take it away. Thank you so much, as always, for being here.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to be reading some poems, sonnets today that are going to be from my book that's coming out. I would say at the end of this year, but it's actually probably going to be beginning of next year, my birthday. But it's called Lollygagger, and so it's appropriate that it's a little behind, because that's what the whole book is about, is how I spent a lot of my life not publishing, not writing, didn't publish anything. Well, I had one publication until I was 43, and then everything that I've done has been, in my 40s and late 40s. And so, and in a youth obsessed culture, I think, you have to remind yourself, that is possible. And so that's really the point of this book, but it kind of covers my whole life and what things I was doing while I was lollygagging and not doing what I really should be doing, which was writing and or publishing. I was always writing. I just didn't have the nerve to put anything out. So anyway, here's the first poem. It's called Lollygagger. Much of my life I'm waiting around. Black baby doll dresses, southern asphalt playgrounds, library stacks and flower crowns, gynecologist waiting rooms to be bought pasta by doctors avoiding their existential doom. Candy heart sucker, some don't even pay, to loom they're prepared for play, display by men in scrubs, seersucker, or pastel shorts and chambray. Some pull me inside rooms, their eyes on the clock, spending requisite time making small talk without any attention, paid to a cock. Is it pretending, even if they know that I probably would? Much of my life, I am waiting around to be good. And the next poem I'm going to read is called Photo Queen. And a lot of the poems that I wrote in this book have to do with my young life and then going into stripping. And I was in a very puritanical household in Northwest Florida, where I grew up. And but I was a little photo queen, and that's what this poem is about. She peeks at 5 in the eyes of her family, in a plastic crown glittered sash that's titled presciently Photo Queen, though she's too young to be any monarch. Bible beneath its gilt frame, purchased at a Kmart, held tight in fingers at least once a day, in time to read scripture, when they gingerly move her image away, discuss fire and brimstone, scarification of disobedient flesh, in the presence of the princess doppelganger they love in that beaded powder blue cupcake dress. Much better, than her new physique obscene. A girl doesn't grow out of a need to be seen. And the next poem I'm going to read is called Special Edition. Learn how to be untouched with a stripper coworker whose customer buys her the collectible Barbies you never take out of the box. At least the proper girls won't. Why she, not you, carries home this acquisition, a special edition, in a royal red gown with lace gold stitch, a jeweled tiara, choker, positions its undisturbed pink box upon the shelves, custom built by her handyman spouse, while you shake breast and pigtails by yourselves to Aqua, untouched as dolls inside her house. Who knew when you took cash to bear it all, you would become a special edition doll? And the last poem that I'm going to read is something that happened in a strip club that was empowering and good. So, and it's called Star Power. If you strip long enough in a small town, even ghosts of sexual assaults past are eventually found at the round end of a phallic-shaped stage, being flashed by some sexy librarian in cat-eyed glasses, reminiscent of college girl you, tormented in his daddy's McMansion, pine for his views, sneak past three-piece suits to the dressing room. 1 hour to ply, baby lotion, perfume, plaid skirts, knee socks, pigtails, conjure, innocent skin he has never been in, college stoner come businessman. Once details how he wailed when ejected from this bar. A body broken by him makes you its star. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristin, for opening our reading tonight with those poems. That again was Kristin Garth, who is our performance anxiety co-founder, co-organizer, and many other hats she wears besides. You can find Kristin on Twitter at Lola and Jolie, LOANDJOLIE, and on Instagram at Kristin Ingrid Garth, KristinIngridGarth. And you can keep up with Kristin's amazing prolific the journals, everything at Kristin Garth, KristinGart.com. Feel free to reach out to Kristin or myself if you ever want to join us on performance anxiety. Thank you again, Kristin, for starting us off. And I'm really excited to introduce our next reader of the evening, who is a returner to performance anxiety in kind. Also a very, very good friend, poet, and author of this lovely thing, which I'm sure he'll tell us a little bit about, which I happen to have a copy of right in hand. That is Joe Ianni. Joe Ianni is an artist who works with poetry. Joe, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kristin and Tom, for having me back. It's really nice to be with everyone today. Thanks to all the guest users, whatever your names may be. It's good to be here, and I'll get started with that. Wrist, flick, stone, flat, round, perfect, pitch, skips, over, own, ripples, made, ripple, reach, back, for sure, wrist, flick, stone,
flick,
flat,
stone,
round,
flat,
perfect,
round,
pitch,
perfect,
kips, over, own, ripples, made, ripple, reach, back, for sure,
reach,
wrist,
back,
flick, stone, flat,
wrist,
round,
flick,
perfect,
flat,
pitch,
round,
skips,
pitch,
over,
skips,
own,
over,
ripples, made,
ripples,
ripple,
made,
reach, back, for sure,
back,
wrist, flick,
wrist,
stone, flat,
stone,
round,
flat,
perfect,
round,
pitch,
perfect,
skips,
pitch,
over, own, ripples, made, ripple, reach, back,
made,
for sure,
ripple,
wrist,
reach,
flick,
back,
stone,
wrist,
flat,
flick,
round,
stone,
perfect,
flat,
pitch, skips, over,
skips,
own, ripples made,
ripples
ripple,
made,
reach,
ripple,
back for shore,
back,
wrist,
shore,
flick,
wrist,
stone, flat,
flick,
round,
stone,
perfect,
flat,
pitch,
round,
skips,
pitch,
over, over,
skips,
own,
over,
ripples made,
ripples
ripple,
made,
reach, back for
reach,
shore,
for
wrist,
shore,
flick, stone, flat, round, perfect, pitch, skips, over, over, own, ripples made, ripple, reach, back for shore. Thanks to CT and Tom for that, and thanks for everyone for listening. These are some poems from a little chap I published recently with Apartment 9 Press. Cameron might be here listening. Thank you, Cameron, for believing in the poems. I'm going to read a few more from here. Brim of my hat, laughing the whole time. The geese come in pairs, honk so loud. My head might walk off my shoulders, move around. I comb that quiet and smile. Worry the many crush sometimes. Leave them unanswered. Could cloud, the loud sea said, days pass. Fish hush wolves, bewildered by leaves. Reeds believe, dew idols. Dwindled, led by wind. Winds the dell to heed, delete. I'm not sure if my friend Cullen is here, but if Cullen, if you're one of the guest users, this one's for you. Ears and cheeks. It's all my head, heat, red, breath, heard. Not you, not me, not. Presence knots my back. We'll do maybe one or two more from here. This one's called Finish. The gift of flesh to hide and find. The keys rattle. Overheard promise from the spider in my hair. An itch, a stare, then upstairs, crushed into bed, dismissing myself of any more bad ideas. Finished. Finish. Polished. Thump thump goes the voice inside my head. I think there was one more here that I wanted to do for y'all. And now I don't remember which one it was. That's okay. That's a sign. It's a sign from the gods, I think. So let me switch gears here. I'm going to read y'all a section from some new work. Here we go. Misspellings knife, warm, stone cold, ache wanting, wait, thought, telling lies, morning, today talking, October 1st. Fascinating creature, the smell I am buzzing, outside, sound inside, churning the fan above, electric spin. I said, if I said I wanted to stop and really meant it, it would entail upending altogether the metaphysics of going. This empty clutter tying laces, dried leaves, and seeds sputter in wind's autumn My eyes, mind, lens, and ear. Jangly ring of keys, walk, clip to jeans, loop. Maybe it's enough worry spent. The lock checked again, and it was locked like I thought. I become a color presupposing such an alter, being alert to that private property trespassed with hiss and whisper, as a thrush's head severed from its winged body pinks at that animal cruelty which knows absolutely separations not work. Hints and hues spew, vehement insisting with snake speech lick, cigarettes to taste yawning stretch, pour out another day, another dead bird. I should bear witness to these omens. Be curses before they burst, juices. October come, full bloom, bright and cool, inching into oncoming trumpet white. How a cloud smiles at your watching, thinking itself into shape, obsessing calendar, wandering time and taking adjustments. This one's for Robert Duncan and his cat. Where else will I go but here, deeper still, with my knees bent and belly full of soup? There's no more I can do for the moon than glory. This strange communal color, a spoon, a bowl, a kind of in-between, blinking in the singing, word, a dream chord for an itty-bitty ditty. And I think I'll read just one more, and I'll call it an end there. I've made friendly with these dead flies in their state of animated suspension, and the spiders with their humorous sense of timing, while I studied the decay of these concrete interstices, watching their pores open and crumble, second cousins of dust. Again, thanks so much for listening. Thank you, CT. Thank you, Tom, for reading with me, and thank you, everybody, for listening.
Fantastic, Joe. It was a privilege to be a part of that set. And that was Joe Ianni, who's inside again, just out from Apartment 9. It's an amazing, amazing chapbook. And Joe is an amazing writer who you find on Twitter and on Instagram, poet, all one word. So yeah, that was really cool. I really can't wait because I couldn't hear all three voices. We were talking about it before the reading. It's like you can only hear the other people. So it's like when you hear the recording, you'll hear all of those ripples. And I'm very much looking forward to doing that. And I'm also very excited to introduce another Joseph in this reading line. My middle name's Joseph, so I'm biased. Joseph Simas, who's another returner to performance anxiety, someone whose work I admire tremendously and who we're very, very glad to have back. Joseph's work appears in Temblor, Hambone, Oblique, Poesy, ampersand SIE, Acts, Tuoni, Poetics Journal, and many other reviews. Books include Entire Days from Burning Deck, Kinderpart from Paradigm Press, Sets from TELS, Première Leçon de Lecture from France, and Mezza Voce from Henri Albiac, his translation from Post Apollo Press, which is really important and close to my heart. So I'm just so excited to read that in here. Joseph's been anthologized in 49+1, so 49 et un Nouveau Poète Américain from France, and he founded Moving Letters Press in Paris in 1984, notably publishing Mace Hill Remat by our very own Norma Cole, who'll be reading a little bit later. So Joseph, thank you so much for being here with us again. Thank you for joining in. We're just so excited to have you that it worked out for you to be able to join us. So thank you and take it away.
Okay, here we go. On exam, I am pleasant, non-toxic appearing, appearing to be me, appearing to be above water, feet in sand, dry sand in a cloudy drift, wet sand behind the ears, agent of appearances, the wind, unidentified objects whistling over here. I have walked far again, too far. It is time to turn back. This is where the blood has drawn us, where the blood has been drawn, and an animal circle has been drawn in the sand. I am happy to sit inside it and talk. The sandstorm bleeds out into the desert. Fade all sound. I think I'll be better without these. More talk in a day than in a month, and not so long ago in several levels, stages of a non-hierarchical continuum, bleeding in, bleeding through, bleeding to one another, stars of craziness and attraction, repulsion. Gregor Samsa as a bug in the system, as a bug in the data mud. The analytical mystical equation hallucination is the poetry that moves in and around language, which is whatever ineffable moves through language, through the open veins of. Hakim al-Ta'i is a character derived from the cover of an empty book. I cannot summon him yet, but what I know of him, very little, that he is a mystic wanderer from ancient times haunting the present, elderly, fit to wander still and lost in time throughout the ages. A solitary figure, yet personable and perhaps even aloof. Children are drawn to him. Most people look kindly upon him, and he looks kindly upon all in a detached, impersonal way that reveals his attention-giving to words, memories, animals, and things over people. Today, he would not harm a soul, but in his past, or in his imagination alone, one can never be sure. One must have been like a war unto oneself, without any other human intervention. He does not disparage others so much as use them in an effort to arrive at a living truth, wherein action, bodily experience, is subsumed by thought, ideational experience, as transmitted through words alone. Perhaps everything other than language is no more than an aspect. Aspects of action and thought experience that must be included only in order to be shed along the way. Toward what? Well, this is a start. I can still will my lips upon yours, my cock deep inside you, but it is not experience yet. The sands are hot before I sit down to weep. The sand in your burning mouth is dead sand. It is long dead. and from Heathen at the desert outpost. You there, lean youth anatomy, my eyes are weary, full of contrary sightings. Grab that hide full of wine and walk a few paces ahead. It is a long path, this dry trail. Spill the wine upon your belly. Let it trickle down your thighs, that I might feel it burn into this tasteless tongue, still thirsting yet and longing. Little change of pace. Airborne and feathering. Mirror a time unfit to mirror, one leans away feebly, inclines up close upon a divisible shelf, casts a faint shadow print, injury aslant, folds lightly bouncing off slope at face value. It flails its sense. It is a bright twinkle in the eye, one long ecstatic emergency. It is unrelenting. Silken sheets creeping up face, letters cascading. It is an enveloping almost. It is an enveloping almost. It is a ruthless curtain study. It means by scattering proof. It means a heart askew, body flat out on its sensuous back, dead eyes fixed on heaven, blank stare pulls itself up. Zombies on the loose in the two-dimensional worlds. Call them paper ghosts. Call them tree spirits on screen. Shroud Kodama syllables. Click, click. Surfaces widely spreading. Outward whoosh, flare. Whoops, a blanket flutter. Starry fluorescence in tired old bones bending. Indexed and referenced, nearly personal at cross purposes, lights on inbound pulse, feeling receding, reading between breaths, between thighs, threads of veined fabric, mesh of life pillowed expanse. It is all choked up. It is shunted by angst, spewed triangles of anger, disordered patterns throughout, indwelling ribbon sequins, neither hem nor button, lodged in the lower abdomen amid the draperies, a final keepsake. And from these threadbare lines a hinge, an animated hiss and mortal kiss, almost a melting gift. Still, there will be none of this yet. It twitches, it quivers in volleys of chaotic growth. It alters taut seams. It squirms through. It screams, arrows. It fades sometimes and suddenly not. It is hands at frantic play. It is an unheard of frenzy. It is a pedestrian, one foot limping in the gutter, a tuft of cranial excroissance. It is a creaturely patch of imagination, a monumental malady. It is all wiggly waggly, a figure walking down the street in the wheezing breeze. It jiggles like a nightingale. And what about me? It is slow acting. It is familiar. It is gravity on rails. Splitting laughter comes over it. It bares its few teeth. Someone watches it. It is a contradiction of hunger set in motion. It lifts a lonely hand. It points a finger. Drawn down. In this dull state there is doubt. There is a passing fog or an impairment, and there a sigh. It cuts off prefix and suffix. In the plain word that remains, there is but isolation. One grows afraid. What is that whirl? It is now a sound, cut off from itself, from me. I do not worry about losing my mind. How would one ever know? But the sound, it abandons me. It is sound that draws no one near. It bleeds out. It is muted sound that is no longer noise even. Thank you.
Thank you so much just for sharing that work with us tonight and for being here. We're just so excited to hear that and to have you. And that again was
I can't hear
Joseph Simas, who you can find. Oh, right. He's there. There you go. Your headphones back.
I couldn't hear it. Sorry.
Oh, no, no worries. Well,
Okay.
welcome back. We just wanted to thank you so much for your set and for sharing those poems with us. I appreciate it. I think like the headphones off mode is a very like, all right, we're in it. You know, we're hearing the real stuff now. So that was really, really wonderful. And that again was Joseph Simas who just joined us and shared that beautiful work. Who you can find on Instagram at Simasdata, SIMASDATA. Joseph's amazing poems, photography, and elsewhere. Otherwise, you can find there, and you can Google Joseph and find his amazing, amazing work all over the planet, and especially his translations of Unrialbiak, which I remember reading for the very first time and just the top of my head being taken off. So it's a privilege and a pleasure to have you here, Joseph. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, cool. Yeah, of course. I'm always like trying to collect myself at the end of all of these readers reading amazing things. And our next reader will be no exception in that regard as we enter the back half of our reading order for tonight. I'm really excited to introduce Heathen, who also as known as Heather Smith. Heathen is the author of 5 books, most recently Outskirts, published with University of Akron Press last month. They have terrible performance anxiety, fittingly, but they are also ridiculously earnest, so that makes up for it sometimes. Thank you, Heathen, so much for being with us. I know this is, you mentioned your first reading in a while, and we're really excited that you chose us to come back to the live reading scene. So thank you so much, and I'm excited to hear what you're going to share.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me okay? I'm all good. All right. Yeah, so I have terrible performance anxiety. So this is the perfect first reading for me to do since before COVID. It's been that long. I never have ever done a Zoom reading before or a virtual reading. So here I am. And so this is my book, Outskirts. And I wrote this during the Trump administration, those terrible years, and was just overcome with so much rage. And I wrote into that rage, and it was kind of a protective rage, a rage that came out of love. And so the book references a lot of unnamed women and myth and religion, a lot of prophetic women and all people who are resisting patriarchy and fascism. Definitely a trigger warning for this book. It does deal some with suicide, and I'm always writing about sort of the extreme limits of human experience, including violence. So there's quite a lot of violence in the book as well, but also love. So the first poem is called Uxar Pilot, which means wife of Pilate. I want no country, least of all this one. Gather in the fields on the outskirts of the village, each of us a body turned to cloud. Signs and wonders. Subtract us from our birthplace, gape, opening, oh, birth pang and cry of origin. Thousands of waves on the face of the lake. Where does a nation's story end? Revenge, a war horse reared back. Oh, I will kill my own countrymen. I will kill my own kin. Have nothing to do with that innocent man, woman, nameless, said. I saw it in a dream, blood on all our hands. The second poem is that I'm going to read is called Demarcation Line. And I was on my way to Ukraine. I got a phone call from my best friend, and her daughter had just committed suicide at 17 years old. We had raised our kids together. So this book is dedicated to her, to Jo was her name. And there's a line from a Ukrainian folk song in here. Dangling like phlegm from the horse's mouth, same night as Bataclan, the girl took her own life. Truth be told, men killed her. Who rules the world? Soldiers' radios crackle to life. Her voice rings in my head from one side of the border to the other. Mother, what will happen if I die in a foreign land? Child, you'll be buried among others. We would have done anything to change the way the story ended. And so every mother waits at every checkpoint and every crossing to carry your body safely home. I've spent all of my life since the war in Bosnia in the 90s doing poetry workshops in conflict zones and post-conflict recovery areas. So I started during the Bosnian War with Muslims who were resisting nationalism in the former Yugoslavia, and then volunteered with Palestinian refugees from Iraq during the Iraq War, where we were the perpetrators there and the oppressors there. And then that group of people started to resist the Assad regime in Syria. And then most of the people who I had been with in Yarmouk, that was Yarmouk refugee camp, were killed by this Assad regime. And then so this connection with Ukraine as well. I taught poetry workshops with internally displaced people and veterans during in 2018. So this is excerpt of a letter from the front line, Black Bread. I buried my childhood self in the field, dropped my garments under a wooden pallet, underwear stained with blood. Forgive God his violence, like a child. Waves crash in the cove of the Baltic Sea, hapless Black Sea, hapless like that, doomed, outcast from the grove, all the apple trees cut down in wave upon wave of terror. After Odessa, cursed with a single shot on the steps of Potemkin, sprawled on the asphalt, looking up at what? Mouth opened in an O painted black, cracked spectacles dangling from our ears, mercury pooling under the back of all our heads. During the ceasefire, I called your name. I can't explain why. And anyway, isn't that a question a child asks right on the cusp of loss? Next, memorizing the names of guns, tanks, years, make, and model. On the front line, we ate black bread, stained with cuttlefish ink. And I couldn't wait to tell you how it faintly, faintly smelled like the sea. So since the war in Bosnia, I've made it my second home. I go every year. I spend a lot of time there, and I have this sort of connection to Sufi Islam, and a lot of my poems are written to some kind of unnamed beloved, which for me is like the idea of God, and so a lot of them are love poems. This one's called The Hearing, which the title comes from the Quran, Sarajevo, and it references the Sarajevo Haggadah, which was this beautiful illuminated manuscript that written in the 1500s, and it was saved during World War II by a dervish who took it to a Muslim cleric, and they buried it up on Mount Bjelesnica. And then during the Bosnian War, it was also hidden and saved, and you can go see it now. I once believed you caught a bird in your hands, as if what was happening in me was love. It was a photograph, a red cardinal cradled in your palms, and I believed it so fully, the moment of believing it, a gasp, intake of breath, the way I'm willing to believe everything unaccountable. You told me it was stunned against the window is all, and you'd gone and picked it up, not caught it. But 3 years later, I still believed it flew into your hands as easily as I did, or tried to do, stunning myself like that, and you refused to pick me up. I'm waiting at the bus stop in Sarajevo, still believing. Sparrows flutter around my feet so close I can make out each individual feather hewed to the breast like the 99 names of God written on the dome of the mosque. Won't you hold one small beast of me in your palm? Not a question, but a prescription for loving me back. Ear bent down to the bird of my mouth when I ask. What does it say about what kind of love it is that I believed you caught a bird mid-flight and it settled into the nest of your fingers? Effortless, both the trick and the belief in it. Nameless birds against clouds now behind the stone walls of the madrasa, in the ancient room where travelers were always welcomed in and given shelter. Find me in the hole in the dirt beneath the flagstones where the Haggadah was hidden, buried during the wars. Daisy cutter bombs, burn bags, hellhounds, so much spectacle. Guest is God, waiting. I once loved what would outlast pain, but you are like these birds who come and go in my dreams, with whom I have no language to share. The Adhan is calling now, his voice telling a story that never ends. I hope you can hear me from here. I'll do 2 more if I have time. It's okay. This is terrorist. This also references the Partizankas, who were these anti-fascist fighters in Yugoslavia, and they're still beloved all over former Yugoslavia. There are 8 bones in your wrist, 8 stars, 2 in the northern crown, in the night sky above the birches. Yours are scattered in the dirt, coronation of some man's headship over you. The death of every woman is a man. I'll keep the joints from your hand, keep them, Draga, in my purse, in my pocketbook, with this pistol engraved with all your names. It was all worth it. Even your blood spilled from the gash under your rib, you would still say, was all worth it. We will pour and pour like fear from Adam's mouth. I'm a Partizanka now, and I hunt with you in the thickets and through the crosshairs, turning from slogans to murder, and I have no regrets. Propaganda of deeds, they said. But what they say about revenge is all wrong. The women who killed went on to live good, happy lives, chickens running around their heart-shaped feet, digging their toes into the dirt under the shade of the apple trees. And then the last poem is Inauguration. There were, for some of us, new weapons, tools we found lying on the ground. Once we came in from the garden and put away our dirty gloves. A fire blazed in the copper pots, and suddenly we knew we could kill him. A king on his throne, thick with flesh. It was as if all along the pacifists in us had been forging secret cells, and the message passed through us all at once. Get the clubs, collect the blades, or looking at our hands for the first time, fingers outstretched, we realized it could be done barehanded. Yanking by the hair, strangle his neck, or most American of all, true to our Constitution, aim the barrel for the back of his head. The simplest thing we could manifest, a small labor, like digging up the earth and coaxing the tomatoes to grow, like widening a pelvis to push our children into the light and arms of a country of love. We could kill just as easily, we promised. We sharpened our knives, and now that we know, we will never forget what it felt like. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heathen, for those incredibly dense and rich poems, coaxing the tomatoes to grow. What a beautiful phrase, and what a beautiful way to bring us to we're getting towards the end, which is always a little bit sad. But that again was Heathen, also known as Heather Durr-Smith, who you can find on Twitter at Chuvaise, which is CUVAJ_SE. And you can also find Heathen on Instagram at Heathen Durr, HEATHENDERR. Heathen is the founder of Chuvaise, which means take care in Bosnian, and it's a nonprofit supporting writers in conflict zones and post-conflict recovery zones. So if you follow Heathen on Twitter, and take a look at that really amazing initiative. You can see some of that work. Again, that you heard a little bit from, I believe, Heathen's latest book, Outskirts, which is just out from University of Akron Press. So check it out. Yeah, it's just really, really, really wonderful and awesome stuff. I am glowing, as I'm sure all of you here. Thank you. Wow. And I'm also really excited because normally the saddest part of any performance anxiety reading is introducing the last reader. And thanks to a sort of like Heisenberg situation we've got going on, I kind of don't have to do that because I'm about to introduce our quote unquote last two readers together because they're going to do some amazing stuff and share some collaborative work that they've been. So I'm excited to introduce both Adrian Lürssen and Norma Cole. Born and raised in South Africa, Adrian Lürssen is the San Francisco Bay Area, or lives in the San Francisco Bay Area now. His book, Human is to Wander, was selected by Jillian Conley for the 2022 Colorado Prize for Poetry and is just out now. It also looks very beautiful. In addition to here's some work from Norma Cole. And Norma Cole's most recent works are Fate News from Omnidon, Lost Dance, a chapbook from Bird and Beckett, and Briefings, written with Adrian Lürssen and published in Second Stutter. So I've said a lot, and now I'm really excited for you two to say a lot and share some beautiful, beautiful work with us. So thank you so much, Adrian and Norma, for being here. Take it away.
Thank you, Tom, and everybody else who has gathered. It's really an honor to read in the company of everyone. It's completely changed my entire agenda. I thought I had a plan as to what to read, but I want to read something entirely different when we get to that in response to what I've heard tonight, which has been really quite amazing. Norma and I are going to start by reading our collaborations, which came out recently in Second Stutter, which you can't see in Skype, but that's kind of a cool effect anyway. We wrote these during the early months of the quarantine, which was sort of one of the bright lights of that period. I'm not going to say much more, except perhaps that it's interesting how these things come together. The earlier work by Joe with the echoes, and then this work between Norma and I, which is a back and forth. But I just want to say that even though I will read one and then Norma will read one, and there's a kind of a call and response effect to that, I think of this work more as response and response, in the sense that each piece that you'll hear tonight is actually composed by both of us, responding to the words before us, and in sort of response to the conversation and the news and the vibe and the swirl of the moment. That's about it. But there's 5 of them, and we'll go through them, and then Norma will read, and I will read some of my work. And these are our briefings. Trace of obsidian, sand at the bottom, concealment's hard won now. Mark with a buoy, buoy, a floating verb. Now is the time, voice without lines. Is that blue an angel without trace? Where is the voice? Moon, sand, child, every blue imaginable.
To reach the edge, measure homeless drift, play in the wind, if voiced, pressure, no flag to adhere, an edge to translate timbre, read in clay, pressure after all, if absent, timbre, time, before drift, wood smoke, or flag.
Distant sounds, indistinct players without strings, catch cobalt illusions, cup or fragment of fragment, whose moment measures into revision's moment as catch in the throat. A mother encounters equal arrangements of sounds, sky strings, indecision, a mother's open palm.
We worked the loom, grant the abandoned way where a window looking out, and avenues variations, the rare tiny bees, fragrant variations of rare herbs, the catch, a cut of mint, the way out or red mint field, loom as dream.
An owl collects silence even by tone, as tone is by chance or by rhyme, a page or eyelid sewn into cloth. Wing lifts owl inside an open lid as cloth sails, our chance, a rhyme, rain, or page. One of the things that I'd like to, so Norma and I, as I said, did these during the quarantine, and we were talking about them, and I said, we should do this. It'll either be cool or catastrophic. And without skipping a beat, Norma wrote back and she said, or both. And to me, that was kind of a moment in the presence of somebody who's been practicing her craft as long and as well as Norma has. It was like, oh, yes, risk-taking. That's a great part of all of this. And so it was this lovely moment. And what we thought as we were sort of preparing for this is maybe Norma could dip into for a few minutes some of the transcript of the chat behind these poems. And this is my introduction of my dear friend Norma, and to say that she'll start with the transcripts and then move on to her own work, which I heard very recently, and you're in for a very big treat. Norma Cole's new work.
Thank you, Adrian. And thank you, Tom, and everyone. I copied some of the chat that we were doing when we were working on these. And Adrian didn't know until really recently. But I'll read a little bit of what we were talking about. And there were, I like back and forth, and you don't need to know who's talking. It is also a really, really nice exercise to just attend to a single word and what to do with it, and to build a sense of what and where you might do same. What's it look like before the typewritten piece we work on? Mine is all scrawled in the notebook. Are your words in your head or you write them down? I take just one of the words and sometimes look it up in the dictionary just for a broader sense, like timbre. Then that's great. I say it over and over to myself. I have to then say the word with another word, feel some kind of rhythm, then sleep on it, then walk on it. Completely so. There are two paths. One is mental, and typically that's a mistake. The other is sound, and that usually pans out. Some of these lines, I will work to bring myself back from the edge of trite or sentimental in mental response. But the sound response, the thinking, every instrument has its own timbre. What does absence sound like? And I realized I was just putting the A of absence and timbre together. Your lines feel to me, as soon as I see them, like someone who can wield language just the way you need to or choose to. So natural, no struggle. Before I start to read my own work, it's new work from a manuscript called Fall Wrists. I want to just say, well, shout out to Joseph Simas, who he published my first chapbook in 1988. Thank you, Joy. Yeah. Okay. Rainy day. Restricted extremities during thought flight. Sensitive documents. The market, the fire, like weather balloons in gear, or a plate glass window in the pavement. Monuments exist like moments, such as not measuring the world by measuring bananas, bankrolled by measuring the madrigals, the vivid contest that could have been avoided by burrowing spiral galaxies, bananas or banners, each one measuring $1, a wish, fishing for exits, resting or resisting. Interludes. With the affection of days of undetermined significance, vaguer than a throw of the net or scrambled eggs. A child of the blockade in perpetuity is it's not biography, substitution and addition. The modern thrill doesn't explain, partly collision. Howdy, where's the transport? The sun is trapped, puzzled, attached, attacked by its own script. It all comes down to this hangover of escape. Dreamhouse waffles. Broadly speaking, when the sun is silent, self-contradicting, moved through paper, what keeps the trouble? Activance, resistance with time, note for note, fell out with the grappling hook of rage, bound, special, master, broadly speaking, delaying sleep to survive. Negative magnitudes, said the philosopher. No account syllables. No account sound, I mean wall, the heart, each wall meaning done. No nothing, voices, add bodies uncertain will without compare. Je have never seen you like this. Tiny hand, muddy, the darker room. He talks blocks of space and books of time. I think your hand on paper, least exercise, leaves, follows geographic projection, weight be seen, applied against two images, night moves, all calm around the body, tell you sometimes, no using mouth tonight, and no sound of syllables. Mad woven gestures generate liquid, not belonging to me. And the last one, the matter. The chatter of the world is just the breath. Dante, Purgatorio. Conditions of the moment. Conditions in the present moment. Conditions are milking in the present moment, lost in different tempi, a striking concentration of them in it and of it. But when the state withdraws from the social contract, a walking dream, the armature, a striking concentration, removes system from sound. Someday will mean these large-scale stained glass windows seem essential to private time. Moon in Scorpio, fallen asleep, but not where you wake up. Can you place this photo from the broken old Bible? Tell us the end and ruin everything. The pink cloud, the ridge line, and everything, grassland, aspen groves, stand of redwoods, trees make the light. Sense of distance, prospect, ever-changing, feverish refraction. Mind not inclined for the stories not found here. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to read from this book. Thank you so much for letting me do that. It is actually the first time that I'm reading from it since it was published. And thank you, Tom, for that opportunity. I noticed that Gillian Connolly, the person who selected this book for the Colorado Prize for Poetry, joined us. And so big shout out to Gillian with a huge thanks for being here and for listening to this, and more than anything else for selecting the book, which is very kind of you. I had something in mind that has completely changed thanks to this reading, and so make what you will. But I'm reading a first couple of these in response, particularly to what we just heard from Heathen and Joe Simas. Make what you will. This first one is called Procession. Firsts and lasts by ones and threes in the schoolyard of ghosts. And has an epigraph by Apollinaire from a poem that he too wrote called Procession. All I need is the sound of their footsteps to tell forever which direction they took. I stepped up into the open doorway of a classroom. The dead looked like pictures of the dead, and even then under a continual threat of being overwhelmed once again. When pregnant women stand still, bathed in window light, intently reading letters, where is one invited to imagine the letters are coming from? Does a schoolyard really matter? It was capacious, soft and reassuring. It radiated the same repose we had observed in her face, morbid fascination of dirt, blood, snakes, insects, smell, ugliness, deformity, size, and all that is grotesque everywhere evident in the book. But we are warned that she has premonitory dreams of attendance at the coming centenary of the Secret Society of Ghosts. Reaching the field, I watched our local Interhamwe drill. They began shouting and waving their hose around. Birds everywhere, as well as garlands, bouquets of flowers. She believes in the coexistence of three different yet related worlds, However, I wasn't going into any of these. Well, I'm not going to. The more complete figures looked a lot like people, which they were once. They did not smell. And Crown of Leaves, which I wrote in response to a series of photographs by an Irish photographer named Richard Marcy, who uses, in one of the most fascinating ways, military technology to capture sites of human conflict and disruption around the globe. And what I'm responding to here is his work that he did with infrared military cameras in Central Africa, documenting the conflict in Central Africa. He's also done work capturing what's happening in the Mediterranean with the migrant crisis in North Africa and the Middle East and through the Mediterranean. And it's extraordinary. And his latest project is to do with what's happening in the Amazon. But this specifically is in response to a series of photographs he did a couple of years ago to do with Central Africa, Crown of Leaves. As aphorisms to comparison, so comparison to shadow. Plural of now claimed just before the shot. Our captions are pictureless. Each curve to the river, a bend in the light. Is this a bird or siren to accentuate invisible inside the tree line? Is he a bird or soldier bathed in pink for a crown of leaves? Who needs light when you have landscape? Who needs friends when you have hidden words? Like rifle, escarpment, enclave. Like bluff. And Joseph threw me off my agenda. And so I'm reading this in response to your last poem. This is called War, which I might have ended with, if not for that. War. What the antelope recalls of heat, or how names serve at an entrance as accent and tracks always lead away from camp. How tools become the entrance like absolution. But the look of leaves, the ostrich, a single leaf. This is the plan to exit without sound. So that poem is from the middle section of this book, which is called A is for Angola. And it's set up as a sort of a strange dictionary, you might say, in which the words in the dictionary are falling over themselves trying to explain something. And I think one of the things that they're trying to explain potentially is war. And I don't want to say too much. There's in fact an interview with me at Tupelo Press and another South African poet, Hank Rousseau. And if you're interested in more biographical detail and thinking behind that, I'll just point you in that direction. But I just want to read these two epigraphs really quickly and then read some of this middle section. First is from Gertrude Stein, and it's history is the learning of spectacular consistency privately and learning it alone. And when more comes, they receive. And then the second part is from an African folktale called Talk. So the men went away and the chief shook his head and mumbled to himself. Nonsense like that upsets the community. Fantastic, isn't it? His stool said. Imagine a talking yam. I kind of need to read that to you because the yam is going to appear in some of what I'm about to read. And so I'm going to change your view on Thanksgiving. Okay, the first is called Teeth, and it's a methodology, an explanation of what may or may not be happening here. Teeth. Absolute north is to guerrilla outpost as love and antelope are to the bush they occupy. Uniform or urgency as overt as names on a skirt. The range is an exercise, tame as a vase, and to talk is to occupy. In time, the range is a plane without end, an envelope of light unable to injure itself. or an ostrich, and light becomes the uniform. Lips a skirmish between what's open and what is tapping to loosen time. The plan to explain is absolute, but only an entrance. So what happens in this middle section is that the words that are being defined are used to define other words, and it kind of falls in on itself that way. And some of them are, well, that's all I'll say. This one is called, let's see. Names. The necessary action to motion, or the English sound for exit. A camp, open as a noun with an ostrich and the so slow collecting of time. The taming of grass by something under it. To excel at inspection, but have no interest in what loosens the neck or spans over it. The overt inside to whatever dismantled slip of night is next. And always a spoken antelope, a hope, a way of finally getting round to the yam. And here's another, news one. If you're interested in this book, you might be guaranteed that there's probably a news 2 in there, but I'll only read news 1. A national explanation of war as solution, absolute as an X-ray, like an arm lying open on the table. And when the plan becomes the reason, it is the way light surrounds an insect and love fills the uniform. Always the root over and the angle between. In a time of names and necklaces, it shows how injury passes for accent and aptitude measures ox and oxen. Otherwise, it is a lamp passing for time, newly inspected. Optional, but informs a notion. Okay, this is train. How am I doing for time? Good? Okay, train. There's 2 uses of the word troop here. The first is a troop, as in a troop of soldiers, and the second is troop, T-R-O-U-P-E, a troop of singers, balladeers, poets, what have you. And I would actually, as now a reader of this book and not the writer of it, I would say that I sense quite a lot of tension between those 2 troops. Make what you will. Train. A troop following its rhymes, an antelope following its insects, the nightly reasoning that holds a nation to its names. How the need to inform finds opposite in yam and time, and how sound from a group is as uniform as a mountain. If to explain is to exit, then to hold is to peel, as in a fact. But the explanation of love as a camp held in time by sand and an ostrich rarely is just another form of training. Plain truth to the end. So I'll read the 2 troops. I won't tell you which is which. You can decide for yourself. Troop. Truth and the room it occupies. The optional persona in the anecdote about an ostrich and its time in camp. Place and its elephant. Or any lasting opposition to clarity. When truth is reason enough to kill and mud becomes a uniform insanity, it is the system that begins when planning is neither overt nor over. The yam is a nuisance, but it allows naming as a form of answer. So in my conversation with Hank Rousseau in the, that appears in Tupelo, we were talking about to me, this is not a South African book. This is an American book. I'm a U.S. citizen, and my story is of migration. And I would hope that this was more of a story of an American citizenship than anything else. But there are a lot of echoes. Many of them are perhaps not considered by many. And the yam is one of them. We were talking about the yam in the African context, and I turned to my wife and I said, "Do you eat yams?" And she said, "Yeah, on Thanksgiving." And so, troop, treason, the rhyme it occupies, a unit performing exercises for the right hand, piece called camp at noon. To be able to explain X, but not enemy or yam, remembering to place insect with inspect and range with engage before asking what moves the unit. Time is framed by this response to sound, and so the elephant scratching its post, the ostrich entering a cause only to be included. Reason requires injury to become its own excuse. The movement and its system saved by an ending. So, do I have time for one more? Are we good? I see no answer, so I'm going to go with it. This again is something I didn't really plan on reading, but in response to the other work, I feel it's a good place to stop. I wrote this, it's called Seventh Song of the Child Soldiers. The book is littered with songs of the child soldiers of various sorts, and this one is Manifest Song. And I actually happened to write it when I was on a trip to Washington, D.C. I used to live outside D.C., but I was there a couple of years ago during the Trump administration, picking up on that echo from earlier. And I went for the first time to the Holocaust Museum, which is unlike any other museum on the mall in Washington, D.C. I mean, it really sort of, there's so much to say, starting with the fact that it's unlike any other museum I've ever visited, ever. And the day that I was there were students, kids, all of them wearing red caps. And you know exactly what was written on those caps. They were in tan pants and white shirts and red hats, walking around the Holocaust Museum. And it was quite a moment. And afterwards, thinking through that, this whatever I was working on arrived, and here it is. Seventh Song of the Child Soldiers, Manifest Song. Not the cotton husks, dried as they are in our lacquer boxes, nor the masks, angular blood casting shadow on the walls, neither the rabbit skins nor the hats, locks that stand for love, not the landscapes, western, torn from the frame, hand-rolled gold and green gases of history, not the roomful of shoes nor the train that brought them here, not the hair, the straw, the bead eyes watching again as for justice, no limes, their stinging memory of seas and shaped progress, no basket of apples, nor the market boys carrying their weight in salt left to right across the page to an imagined queen. No plans for the new city modeled on what we remember of Mogadishu, Lubeck, Lagos, Phnom Penh, Cape Town. Nor the chairs, helmets, violins, sextants, spears, and so on. Nor collections of written clues, unless, of course, unless untrue. It had never been a calculation of need or destiny, truth be told. And there would be no room made for it now. No room for the middle passage either, nor the music born in cells, light as it was, light as it had been, mined, plentiful, held in red handfuls of mud. Listen here for the catch, the practice of song, polished into voiced lies. No wagon either, old of course, and old when all roots from the capital. You understand. So I said I was going to end there, but I'm actually going to end with this one-line poem from the middle section again. Maybe slightly more optimistic. This is called Form. Exit the camp at noon. Find the rhyme in hope and group. Thank you.
Wow, what a beautiful note to end tonight's reading on. That was amazing. And that, again, I have double duty in reminding you that that was just Adrian Lürssen, whose amazing book, Human is to Wander, is in my hands. Adrian can be found on Twitter at Adrian Lürssen, ADrianLurssen, and on Instagram at Adequatic, which is AEEQUATIC. And I believe this is the first reading that Adrian has done in support of Human is to Wander, which is an incredible book. I have no idea. I also am just like risking the show at Skype, and I'm sure it's doing all kinds of wild things. But yeah, this is a beautiful book. And it has a beautiful epigraph from the other poet you just heard, Norma Cole. I just want to read because I don't remember if you read it, Adrian, but this is the epigraph from this other book, Spinoza in Her Youth, which is a great favorite of mine. The epigraph says, "At some point or at gunpoint, human is to wander. The light is not the usual light. The birds are." And that epigraph was written by Norma Cole, who you heard and who is a hero of mine and who is on Instagram at NormaCo, NorMaco. You can find some of Norma's visual work, books, reviews, etc. They're on Norma's website, which is NormaCole, NormaCole.org. And it was an absolute privilege and pleasure to have you both on tonight. You were amazing. Your readings were amazing. Your books are amazing. It was just so cool. So thank you so much for being here.
I have to interrupt you and say this one thing, because this is how the magic occurs. It was sort of like being hit by lightning when Heathen was reading, because I think that what you just read of Norma's has a universal weight to it that captures every time. But if I am correct in remembering this, it was actually written to Barbara Guest after a conversation about the Bosnian conflict. And then suddenly Heathen started talking and the magic occurs.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really just a beautiful night. Thank you so much, Tom and
Yes, it
everyone.
was.
Thank you. Thank you,
Just
Thank
for
you, everybody.
everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. I just wanted to say by way of closing to thank you all so much, not only to our readers who just shared some incredible work, and I'm so glad, thank you, Adrian, for sharing that. I didn't know anything about that connection, and I think that's so beautiful that it's there. And I also just wanted to thank, too, quickly our listeners for giving this hour of their lives over to poetry. I hope if you're listening and you have a sheaf of new poems close at hand, or you have a poetry hero or poetry very good friend who you think should read in support of their awesome stuff, please consider dropping us a line at Performance Anxiety. We're at Performance ANXT on Twitter, or via email. You can email us at poetrybooksontape@gmail.com. We would love to have your work at a future event. Our next reading is going to be on December 15th, keeping with that third Thursday thing, and we would love to just see you there. It would be such a privilege. So thank you again so much to all of you for being here and for sharing this awesome full circle connection that's here. It's a great thing to be a part of. And I'm going to stop the recording right there.